Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many of you joining us this morning. I'm Veronica Ryan, Education Officer here in Cloughjordan Ecovillage. I'd like to welcome you all here today for our 20 Years of Growing Keep Listening event. This session will be recorded and made available on our website, to let you know. And please do share your reflections in the chat as we go through the session on the lessons you think we offer our society, as we will have an opportunity for participants to contribute in a facilitated discussion after the presentations. So, 20 years on, we now have over 100 residents living in 50 high-performance homes and a newly planted woodland. We have an eco-hospital and a district heating system. There's a community farm, an enterprise centre, and research gardens, an amphitheatre, a bakery, and a labyrinth. Today, we want to reflect on what has been achieved here and to consider what important lessons we offer going forward. I'd first like to welcome Mick Canny, Chair of the SPI Board. Mick? He's on. Mick, you're on mute.
Good morning. Thanks, Veronica. So Michael Canny is my name. I'm the current chairperson of the Board of Trustees of Sustainable Projects Ireland, which is the educational charity that was established over 20 years ago to realise the Ecovillage project. It's my pleasure to welcome you and to thank you all for participating in this symposium today. 20 years ago, a small group gathered in Dublin to progress the radical idea of creating Ireland's first Ecovillage. And today's event is a valuable opportunity to celebrate our achievements and to reflect and learn from our mistakes over that time. There's been a long list of notable milestones and challenges over the years: the land purchase, the design and planning process, the construction of the infrastructure, to name but a few. This massively ambitious and complex project was achieved by a non-specialist group of people working on a voluntary basis and by consensus. By 2014, most of us have built and moved into our homes. Exhausted but exhilarated, we set about the most complex challenge of all: living together. A vibrant community of over 50 households now lives on the land, and many other families and individuals have chosen to make their homes in Cloughjordan. We newcomers all feel fortunate to have arrived here, and we're all very proud to say that we're all from Cloughjordan now. After a long period of stagnation and, you could say, recovery, we're now in the final stages of developing a new strategic and business plan which will guide the project over the next 5 years. The trustees are confident that from early 2021 onwards, SPIL will be able to move decisively to complete the estate. Vacant sites will be developed through private sales and in cooperation with housing associations and other cooperative entities. Over the same timeline, we will seek to resolve all outstanding planning and infrastructure issues and to construct a new wastewater treatment plant to enable population growth. We also have plans for a dedicated education, information and administrative hub for the project. Attracting a new generation of energetic and committed people to the project is essential, and ensuring affordability in this next phase is a key to achieving diversity and to our long-term success as a community. It's been a long road, and some of the first generation of eco-villagers have already passed on, and we remember fondly their contribution today. The next generation have already stepped up, and we're very proud of our youth who bring such energy and passion to the project. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation, and I want to thank Vert and our Education Officer, Veronica Ryan, for organising the event. I'd like now to introduce Minister Eamonn Ryan, who's recorded a welcome message for you here today.
Hello. I'm very glad to join this 20-year celebration of the Ecovillage in Cloughjordan to celebrate what's been done and to look forward to what's coming next. I couldn't believe it was 20 years. I remember back 20 years ago when a whole range of people I knew were talking about this Ecovillage and setting it up and full of real ambition and vision for the future, understanding that climate is going to change everything. understanding the need for energy security and food security and biodiversity all go with that climate challenge. It's been a long 20 years, long time setting up. Then setting up, houses start to be built just as the financial crisis hit. Learning loads of lessons. Learning that energy systems are complicated and that sometimes they don't work the way we thought they originally would work. That's what's been learnt in Cloughjordan. Pioneers learning sometimes it's difficult to get things done the way you originally thought, but also learning what does work and actually learning how you build a community. And what I think is really strong and really brilliant about Cloughjordan is that it's in the middle of a community, in the middle of Cloughjordan. Our government I'm involved in now has a town centres first policy. I think we can hold Cloughjordan up as a brilliant example of that. It's an eco-village which is in the centre of an existing town, a town with a long history of sustainability in a variety of different ways. When I think of Cloughjordan, I think of the Fab Lab that was set up there, looking forward to doing things, making things differently. I think of really good quality bread. I think of organic farming and the local or the farm connected to the community is a really good example of putting various different projects together in the one place. I think of all the individuals I know who are living there and who've thought about living there, and I hope maybe will live there in the future. I think we're only at the start. 20 years of growing, as they say, but that comes followed by 20 years of blooming, and that's what I hope and expect will come next for Cloughjordan. That we see it to grow, that we see a large number of houses where we can manage all the systems, water, wastewater, energy, food, in a sustainable way. And in doing that, to continue to do what Cloughjordan has always done, being a beacon of hope, an example of opportunity, an example that we can and will do things differently. I want to wish everyone the best of luck today. I understand there's probably going to be a whole series of conversations, discussions, panellists, analysing what's happened in Cloughjordan and what might happen next. I want to commit government to keep supporting it, because it is in the real centre of what we want to do, build back in the centre of our towns and villages new sustainable communities on rail lines that maybe we can, remembering Duncan Martin here, we can restore to their full glory and their full potential and the full opportunity. Maybe in this difficult times, actually Cloughjordan is really fit for purpose. COVID is changing a lot of things, so we can see that remote working is now a possibility. Really being aware of our own local environment and the importance of living in that 15-minute city, they call it, but the same applies for a village or town, getting our own local environment right. Those founding principles, those founding idealists were correct. Looking after our own local environment, creating our own natural home in community is where we need to go now. Not just because of the climate challenge we face, but also the biodiversity crisis we face. And also the potential as we address those two to switch to a new economic model, a new way of living in this country. That's what Cloughjordan has always been about. I say well done for the last 20 years. I look forward to the next 20 and beyond. Thank you.
We're now going to be joined by 4 speakers who will share their experiences of living and working in Cloughjordan Ecovillage. So I'd like to introduce Aaron Bailey. Aaron?
Thanks, Veronica. Yeah, it's great to be here, speaking on behalf of one of the younger people that have grown up in the Ecovillage. I'm very happy to. It's been hugely influential for me. So I moved here when I was 12, so I've seen the development of the Ecovillage since it was a field to now having 50, 60 houses on it. And it's been extraordinarily powerful, like very shaping for me as an individual. I could see as I was growing up here the benefit and the power of growing up in community, but I didn't really have a sense of belonging until I left for a bit, travelled, and then came back with a much more of a renewed sense of appreciation for what it actually meant to live here. Because that sense of belonging has really been grounded in the connections around, to be able to grow up around the people that provide your food, the baker, the farm, to see people that are being creative with their livelihoods, with the enterprise centre and developing things for the benefit of the community. It really just has sunk home to me in the last few years that this place is really built on the strength of connection and relationships. And I think that is something that the Ecovillage really has to offer to the wider society. like when people's livelihoods are based on benefiting each other, there's so much mutual support for that. So, even my own personal projects, there's always been immense support, whether it's been activism or, communication workshops for the benefit of the community. It's been a really fulfilling place to be. So naturally, the whole of the community is based on the principles of collaboration, creativity, consensus. And I think that going forward, society needs more models of that. And this is a model. Especially my generation growing up, especially in light of COVID, they're not going to have these clear paths towards jobs, livelihood, purpose laid out. And here, where people have had to be creative with that and have always tried to be, it serves as a model of that in a way that society has really needed, and more so than ever before. It's also been a fantastic place to be locked in during COVID. We had our food security, as the minister said. There was still loads of community support around, even though we couldn't physically see each other that much. We could still go for walks. We had nature around. Overall, it's just been a wonderful place to be. Although I do think that one of the learnings is that it's not been that accessible, especially for people in their 20s and 30s. I've been fortunate, but for the next generation of people coming in, we don't have a clear way in that's aside from the ownership model of buying a site and building a house. So that is something we're going to really need to address. Probably quite tight on time, so I'll keep it very brief for now. But it is a pleasure, and I really look forward to seeing what the community will still offer to society and what the future generations growing up here will offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. We're going to hand over to Iva now.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Great to see so many people. Wasn't expecting nearly 70 online, so that's wonderful. 3 minutes to talk about what it's like to live in the Ecovillage is pretty challenging. But I suppose the word that came to me very strongly this morning was that it is intense. Living in the Ecovillage is intense. And obviously that is, has both its positives and its negatives. You have an awful lot of contact with your neighbours. Sometimes it feels like you're kind of living in an extended meeting. You give up your Saturday mornings to, go online yet again. There's a sense of having both you have to live with both your personal demons and also the mistakes that we have collectively made over 20 years. So I also had this image this morning of like a to-do list, my own personal to-do list, which never seems to get shorter. Indeed, I feel like I'm dealing with, the older I get, the more I realize I'm dealing with things that are left over from my forebears, those who've gone before me and my family. And then you've got the to-do list of all the things that we haven't finished in the Ecovillage. And when you got involved in something in your 20s and, believed that we would indeed become very unusual property developers and we'd have the whole thing sorted in 5 years, you realize that this is a lifetime's work. I suppose in many ways the Ecovillage living here is very similar to living in any housing development in a small community in the Midlands of Ireland. And I suppose the way we developed the Ecovillage in many ways reflects the cultural and social norms of 20 years ago, or even 25 years ago. We took on a lot of debt. So collectively, we went down the debt route, borrowing a lot of money from various financial institutions. We're still coping with that. And then some of us, we borrowed a lot of we got into a lot of personal debt. So we built private homes. We didn't build social housing. And we also, I think it's very important to say, and this is something that's become more and more clear to me as well, that we were very male-dominated Ecovillage. We had 6 men and 1 woman on the board at the beginning. And I think that has set that kind of power dynamic still plays out. Indeed, the current board isn't much better. So I've got 10 seconds left. There are many, many wonderful things here. Our commitment to our ecological charter, the biodiversity, the bird life in the Ecovillage is amazing. There, Davey will be impressed with me. Also, I think what's very unusual here is that I think even though we don't have any formal conflict resolution processes, there's a very strong commitment among people to try to resolve conflict, and we're all humans. So yes, we have had conflict, and we will continue to have conflict. What am I most proud of? I'm most proud of the fact that we are here, warts and all. Yeah, we have succeeded in doing something quite remarkable. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Iva. We're going to hand over to Ollie now.
Yeah, hi everybody. So just even following on directly from Iva, I wrote a poem about the community farm here, which hung around the word intense as well, because I do think it is an important and interesting word. The line I used in the poem was, it was dense and intense, like sitting on an electric fence, because everything is more. There's more emotions, there's more vigorous conversations, more happiness, more sadness, more belief. So it's an amplified life, I think is probably a nice way to kind of put it. But amplified doesn't just mean good or positive. It's just a lot more of the stuff that does be happening. So yeah, so I suppose, but how I got here, I suppose, my work was mobile in that I was a journalist. So I kind of realized, hold on, I could actually live where I want to live rather than live where I technically am right now. And then I knew of the Ecovillage from when I was in the Dublin Food Co-op years ago, when I moved to Dublin first, really, as a younger person. And of course, so I kept my eye on the Ecovillage a little bit. I'm a little bit younger than the people who founded the Ecovillage, but I kept my eye on it. And then myself and my partner, Vicky, we kind of went, well, okay, where we are is nice. It's lovely in lots of ways. We have lots of nice friends and so on. But just the idea of a community of, to some extent, like-minded people trying to, live more ecologically and more engaged. We said, okay, we'll give it a go. We knew some of them a little bit anyway. So that was partly why I moved, because we could and we wanted it to be nice for family and for kids. And it has been, it's been an amazing place to bring up young people. Just not having the fear of traffic is just so good. Like the Hans, my now 15-year-old, until, was just in bare feet a lot of the time, out and about, having the crack until like 11 or 12. Like, it's just so nice to be able to do that. I suppose my work then as well has managed to stay here, which is great. I kind of built it up from journalism into more sort of European policy work. And I also lecture in UCC. So I can get the train in the morning to Cork, get the bike scheme from the train station to UCC, teach for 3 hours, get the bike back to UCC and come back on the train. And I do that one day a week from January to March. And the train is so important, and having accessible public transport is so important. Having a clustered set of people living together is brilliant. There's lots of intellectual capacity and skills that get traded all the time, but you also need connection to cities, and we have that with the train. So it's really important to keep that service. And I would just maybe like as well that if Eamonn Ryan ever gets to hear this event, a recording of it, that he really focuses on the transport and climate change part of his remit, because keeping the train service running and improving the train service is optimal, I think, for the future. I love the farm. The farm is a huge part of what I do here. I think it's an amazing way to just get involved in a practical way to do things. 1/3 of the membership comes from the wider community. Anyone who moves to Cloughjordan, lots of them tend to get involved in the farm, which is great. It's a lovely idea to just get involved with in a practical way. So that's amazing. It's been really good as well from a gender and inclusivity perspective, because the volunteers tend to be a mixture of male and female in a reasonably good balance. Likewise with the board, likewise with the coordination. We've had people like Hazard on the call here from Kurdistan. We've had people from Russia volunteering. We have people from all over Europe. And one of the biggest divides in Europe, I think, is an East-West divide in terms of resources and power and so on. And I think the more we can do to integrate in a constructive, positive and culturally appropriate way, people from Eastern Europe into the European sort of project, so to speak, I think it's very positive. And I think, in a very, very small way, the European Solidarity Corps work that we do here in Cloughjordan has been great for that, and that's been through the farm. There's a publication by an organisation called the Post Carbon Institute called "The Future is Rural," and that's about the fact that in a culture that's not reliant on fossil fuels, there will be lots of sort of reimagining of how people live together, and that will involve re-ruralification. And COVID has actually sped that process up somewhat. So whether it's fossil fuels, peak oil, or COVID, clustered places like this have great intellectual capacity, great resource capacity. And now that we've the fibre optic broadband, we can actually work together constructively. So I really like working here. I like the European projects that we've brought here. I was able to literally knock on my next door neighbour's door one day and say, listen, there's this European project I'm not going to be able to do with my European colleagues. Could it be done here in Cloughjordan? And that led to a 3-year project being here that was in partnership with 20 different organisations around Europe and employed people for 5 years or for 4 years. You can't do that everywhere. You can't just knock on your neighbour's door and go, hey, why doesn't your organisation take this? There's like dozens of organisations here. There's dozens of little groups here. There's a Dark Sky group. There's Cloughjordan to Palestine. There's lots of work done on biodiversity. There are so many, even the work done on Scaboy Bog, like with Garrod, my next door neighbour here, is just amazing. There are so many things that can happen here that, I'm just so glad to be here with, from a family, from a farm, from a work perspective. I think I've hit my 3 minutes though.
Great. Thanks so much. Nice to hear you. We're going to hand over to Morag now. Hi, Morag.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Gosh, Ollie, that you got a lot into that. Seems like a long 3 minutes. I kept mine. I frame mine just in terms of my personal journey, and I'm kind of, oh God, I even said that phrase, which I hate. My personal story, and kind of contextualize it as I've done it, and I've tried to keep it pretty snappy. So, my personal story is that we joined in around 2005, and the decision to move here from like the centre of Dublin where we lived was really difficult because we were happy there. We'd always lived in cities, but we were in our mid-30s. We were renting long term. And the urban co-housing project we'd been trying to establish hadn't worked out, and we couldn't afford to buy. It was the boom. So we didn't feel we had many options if we were to stay in Ireland. So we decided to join the Ecovillage, and we moved to Cloughjordan in 2010. And then over the next year and a half, my husband Bruce built our house as a co-build with our next door neighbour. So during the build, I was working and we were homeschooling our 10-year-old daughter, which was quite a challenge for all of us. So beyond affordable housing, we had 2 main reasons for moving to Cloughjordan. The first being environmental, as well as being involved in Dublin co-housing. We were involved with FASTA, the Foundation for the Economics of Sustainability, which some of you will know, part of the IEN also. And that has given us a real awareness of environmental and climate issues, as well as the problems with the economic growth model, energy, food security issues. We've been growing veg already for years in the city. So after the house built, Bruce set up a research project, which is now a YouTube channel, trialing different methods of veg growing. It's called The Red Garden. You can easily find it on YouTube. It's pretty small comparatively, but he's had over 6 million total views. So, getting to the wider world in that way. So we really wanted to be part of a solution, a project which aimed to demonstrate sustainable living. So the Ecovillage seemed like a good fit for us. The second reason we chose Ecovillage was we really wanted to be part of an intentional community. We had an only child deliberately, and we'd always been very community focused. So we were really attracted to the idea of living among people who valued that similarly. I didn't say like-minded people because managing the project together has taught us very quickly that like-minded often isn't the case. Which I suppose is a good thing, because otherwise that would mean we were a cult, which we're not. Then again, I would say that, wouldn't I? As in any rural location, making a livelihood is difficult for lots of us here. I mean, I work mainly in admin, and I've never had one full-time job. For a while, I had actually 3 up to February this year, which is exhausting, and I'm down to 2 now, so it's more manageable. So I'm the office person for FASTA. I look after the admin, membership, and all of that. And I brought that job with me when I moved down here, and I've kept it on. And along with my neighbour Ben, who's here also, I run a small company which provides fibre broadband to most of the occupants of the Ecovillage at a really reasonable cost, we think. It was only this year that Air gave us a fibre connection, and as Ali mentioned there, so now every customer has high-speed internet, which means working from home is really doable now, even with COVID and the demands of Zoom and Netflix, where it just was really awful before then. So that's really positive, I think, and it will help, I think, us to develop. So as well as work and housing, the other thing for me moving here, the big decision, the big consideration was transport. We've never had a car. I've never in my life driven one. So the local train service is really, really the key to our decision. And it was only after we moved here that we realised it had been under threat of closure forever, and that after 2008 crash, it became a really, really strong possibility. So I've been involved in the campaign, and I'm hoping Ollie's going to join because he's such a supporter, which isn't just about saving the line, but it's about getting Irish Rail to provide a proper service, which it never has. It's been a real struggle to get them on board, but recently we've got the support of all our TDs on the line and the hinterland. We've had questions asked in the Dáil. There was a debate in the Dáil with Minister Ryan the other night. And so I'm really, really hopeful now for the first time that we can actually turn this into something really, really positive. And beyond my personal, the kind of selfish motivation, it's always been obvious to me that sustainable public transport has a huge role to play in making rural communities viable. And so that's why I really, really push for the train. So it took a few years for us to settle in here once we'd moved. Leaving our old life, the urban life behind, was really hard. I won't lie. It took a few years. But now we have no regrets. I'm really, really happy here. There's never a dull moment, COVID aside. The support we've received in personal tough times, you just couldn't get. I mean, I don't think you'll find in many other places, no matter how established and community spirited they are. And that isn't to say there hasn't been challenges. They've been touched on by everybody. I think we have made lots of mistakes as a project. But in terms of what we can offer the wider world, I think the main teaching is humility, and that intentional community is really, really hard, but it is worth it. You just need to really work hard to find the ways to work and live with each other, to temper your expectations of what is achievable, and to try and be kind to each other when you really don't feel like it.
Great, Morag, thanks so much. Okay, we're going to hand over to Pader now. Hi, Pader, how are you?
Hi, Veronica, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Fáilte roimh go Cloughjordan. So having heard inside voices, we now turn to 7 outsiders, all of whom have been involved in the Ecovillage in various ways, some of whom have given us an awful lot over the years to help us to get to where we've got to. So I'm simply going to introduce them. They've been given 5 minutes to tell us about what they feel our achievements are, how they see us moving forward, and what lessons they feel we offer for the wider society. So we're going to start with Mary Murphy from Maynooth University.
Hi, thanks very much. Thanks very much to everybody, and congratulations for the 20th anniversary. I'm going to take a cue from Morag here, and she talked about the humility. And I must say, I feel very humble right now in terms of I feel I've very little right to comment in some ways because I've only had a very modest engagement. And even listening to the 4 contributors there, I want to change everything that I was going to say. I've been scribbling and crossing out and adding in. But it's starting kind of with like what Mick talked about when, the 1999 and the first inception of what's now been celebrated as the 20 years. I mean, it struck me that even before 99, there were people with ideas and drive, and that it took so much work, even prior to 99, to get to the kick-off stage. And to some degree, I mean, there's the metaphor of a river kind of going underground and then breaking through as a bubbling brook in 99, but then developing, and as rivers do, sometimes stagnating, sometimes curving, or looping, sometimes going through torrents and rapids and waterfalls, and gradually getting bigger and bigger. And I think it's quite a good metaphor in a way, because I think there's that oxymoron in a way, isn't there? There's this sense of setting out in a planned way to create an intentional community. And then there's what John Lennon says, that life is what happens when you're busy planning other things. And it's the real difficulty of trying to marry those things, having a vision, having a dream, and then working together in a way that you're combining your lives, your work, your children, your communities, your relationships, as well as the big project. And I just think fair play to y'all for having the staying power to get there that long and to do it in a way that you didn't lose the values along the way. I think that's really important. It could have, at different stages of crisis, I think, evolved into a more hierarchical project or a project that forgot the initial values that drove it. So I think it's really important that it still is a consensus-driven, co-creation-led kind of model where you do use a very intentional way of making decisions and a very sustainable way of trying to live together. I think that's really important. Those values didn't get lost. So we were asked to speak to the importance and I think just the very fact that it exists, it survives, it thrives, it's expanding. That's what's important. It's the real life experience of it that it offers, and it's been through such significant crises like the great financial crisis, even the pandemic now, but also all the local crises about planning, about sewage, about water, about all the local issues that kind of could have broken down infrastructure or communities at any particular time. So I think it's the degree to which it inspires hope is really important. I really like that it's so embedded in the local community in Cloughjordan, but also in the wider local ecosystem of other towns and villages and local government relationships, but also that it's part of the national and international ecology of intentional communities is really important. I also like the fact that different people have, as you said, it's not like-minded people. People have very different political perspectives. They have very different understandings of even how you create change. So some people are a bit nerdy about it. Some people are very practical about it. Some people are very policy-driven about it. And that's what's great. That's what brings together the vitality that actually can make it work. And from my perspective as an academic, I think it's obviously made a very significant contribution to academic knowledge. I've been cited in lots of places, but it's also a challenge back to academics, I think, to try and be more pracademic about their own work and to actually get out and do things rather than write about and think about things. I really liked, I think it was Eva first said intensity, and Ollie then, this concept of an amplified life, I think is so attractive in terms of the kind of soul searching that people are doing right now in the context of the pandemic must be a way of using that poetry to bring the ideas out to people. We've been asked to kind of identify, in moving forward, what some of the challenges might be. And I think Mick Canny said it at the very start. The demographic challenge for sustainability, the challenge of diversity and social mix, and all that being very related to the model of housing that's possible in the context of national housing policy, and what it's possible to co-create even with the local community is so limited. I think one of the big challenges is working with a local authority that in Ireland isn't that strong anyway. We're one of the weakest local government systems in Europe. That brings its own challenges, because I think in other situations, it's possible for the local authority maybe to move more stones in terms of adapting their models. But I think local authorities here aren't that empowered themselves. So you've got a challenge in even learning from others about what they did aren't always transferable into the Irish context that easily. So I think that's important. I really was glad that Eva raised the issue of gender equality, because that's one thing I think in terms of a challenge, I think, is making much more explicit that the goal of gender equality needs to be part of any intentional community that's about sustainability, inclusivity, diversity, but also just the concept of permaculture, I think, requires us to define more. It's so centred on care of the earth, on care of each other, and on being fair in sharing care work, ecological work, paid employment. And I think drawing that out more explicitly is a bit of a challenge. And I think there's a real opportunity, actually. The National Economic and Social Council just last week produced a report on the future of social welfare in Ireland, and they're promoting the idea of a pilot participation income, which will explicitly use income supports to value socially inclusive work, socially useful work that isn't about productivist work. So it's about caring for the earth, for each other. It's about political engagement, environmental engagement. There's a real opportunity to maybe push the boundaries of maybe recognising the care agenda much more fully in the life of the village. I think also there's maybe a challenge in, like, a lot of the networks are into environmental networks, and that's very valid. But there's maybe a challenge in embracing, I mean, I probably am an example of it, but people who are more from a more maybe trade union background or equality, anti-poverty background, the different types of approaches people bring with them to make some alliances in broader networks is part of the challenge as well. So I was asked to finish with lessons. And I think Marek talked about the future is rural, and I actually had written down the future is local and the future is public. And I think there is something about trying to build on a vision of this idea of how good public services like transport, as you spoke about, or housing, how they necessarily need to work conjoined with the concept of where communities are and the importance of local. So local, rural and public services all have some really important role to play. So I think the lessons that Cloughjordan or the village is offering is that the type of knowledge that you're creating is the knowledge that's created by doing things in a co-created and a co-produced way. And that's a really particular form of knowledge. It's a very blended form of knowledge. I've really been struck over the decade or so. I've had some insight into the community is how dominant culture is, music is, language is, like that. It's not all about the eco agenda. Like, they're so diverse, the richness of people's lives. And I think it captures what Ollie was talking about by the amplified living. There's obviously a lot of lessons about how hard it is to work the governance, the finance, the planning systems. There's very rich knowledge to be drawn out there. But I suppose and I think a couple of people mentioned it, is that agenda of the challenge of translating the learning and inviting into the process young people. And I think that's been done really well to date. And particularly through trying to get at the education systems and making links and the education projects. I'm really impressed by my own children who have been inspired by Cloughjordan and who are gone off in very different ways to make that real in their own lives. And I think tapping into how young people are really, how they are doing things is so different, how they're using social media is so different to us, how they're setting about their own individual understandings of change and implementing it in their own lives is quite different to the generations that went before. And I think with some imagination, but particularly with collaborating with young people, particularly informal collaboration through what they are doing in their own lives, that there's bound to be new things that can happen into the future, new lessons and new ideas emerging. So well done, everybody. Congratulations. And I think it's been really good. Well done. And I didn't need my bell.
Mary, thank you so much. So rich, so much to offer us. So we move on now to Tim Crowley of Martello Low Carbon. Tim has acted as a financial advisor to our board for some years now. So Tim, over to you.
So greetings from Bandon in County Cork. I'm Tim Crowley. I work in finance for sustainable projects across housing, energy and corporate supply chains. So delighted to be invited this morning. I visited Cloughjordan on many occasions, sadly not this year for obvious reasons. I'm here with my dad, who's also wanted to visit Cloughjordan. So far this is the nearest he will get. But no visits to Cloughjordan in 2020 for obvious reasons and because of the pandemic. But the pandemic, in my mind, makes Cloughjordan more relevant than ever. It's always been an exemplar project. You were pioneers when you set out, but in the post-COVID environment, the aspects that Cloughjordan brings to bear are more relevant than ever. Climate resilience and sustainability are now mainstream. They weren't when you started out, and they're understood in places where they might not once have been understood, in politics, in corporate boardrooms. It's mainstream, it's totally understood and considered relevant. I work with one company in the food processing business, and they will say to me, the guy I work with, he reports into the CEO, and the CEO that says his two main issues are Brexit and sustainability. So sustainability is absolutely right there at the core, and what Cloughjordan does is totally relevant and an exemplar project in that context, not just in Ireland, but internationally. So I understand and have many times heard the challenges, and it's easy to get stuck in the weeds, and the day-to-day challenges and difficulties are always there. But when you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, it is a unique and standout exemplar project on an international scale. In terms of suggestions, the model to date has been to buy a site and build your own house. And more than ever, the main message I would say today is that that development model needs to change. Aaron referenced it in terms of making it more accessible to young people, but also to minorities, and to introduce social housing, which are a part of other communities all around Ireland, but aren't part of the Ecovillage at present. So I would recommend or suggest a model where houses are built, pre-sold, built and financed external to the Sustainable Projects Ireland itself, and that can accelerate development and make it happen faster and make it more inclusive and accessible. And for Cloughjordan to take that on for the second part, following on from your initial 20 years, would be a tremendous thing to do. The time is now, the time is right to do it. It's possible now to do it. Everything is there to do it. It will accelerate development, and finance is available to do it. There are other organizations working in hybrid, non-totally market type models. As some of you will know, I do the finance for O'Coolan, which is a community-led housing initiative. O'Coolan has had discussions with Cloughjordan, and that's the sort of organisation with which Cloughjordan can partner and achieve development on a more accelerated scale and achieve those objectives of accessibility and inclusivity. In terms of making that happen, what's the biggest challenge? My experience is that the biggest challenge is the sociocratic governance model. That I understand it, I've no personal experience of it, but it does seem to make things painstaking, and I'd have to say from my experience, slow. And is it possible to change that? Well, I heard what Iva said about more women. I definitely endorse that. Without getting into gender stereotyping, my experience is that women are very practical and they get stuff done and they're good at multitasking. So I'd say bring on the women, absolutely. My own preferred governance model, you won't relate to this, Eva, is a benign dictatorship. You probably won't agree with that. But if we're going to have a benign dictator, let it be a woman at least. So what Mary said about pro-academic, I think there is a role for the academics to come in and look at the governance and see the strengths and weaknesses. But is there a way for the governance model to be more decisive and proactive? Because I think that will be integral to the success of Cloughjordan going forward. So in terms of the future, I think that the future belongs to models like the Ecovillage because it's sustainable. As someone said, it's rural, which is very important. A lot of these models emerge in urban society, whereas the fact that it's in the heart of rural Ireland makes it very interesting and relevant, and that it's integrated with the mainstream community within Cloughjordan makes it very relevant. And finally, it's a hybrid model, and we're going to have more of these hybrid models emerging now. No one believes that pure market solutions can solve everything. No one really believes that, so that models like this are possible. So my main message would be to change the development model to make it more inclusive and accessible by building out without doing it site by site. Be bold and decisive in that manner. And in that way, I think the future does belong to Cloughjordan. I won't get into American politics, but the president-elect has started quoting Seamus Heaney as well about when history and I've forgotten it now. when hope and history rhyme. And I think that hope and history are now on the side of Cloughjordan Ecovillage. So I wish you every success in the next 20 years. And the evidence I've had is that an awful lot of people believe in the project and want to help it from outside as well. So congratulations and best wishes for the future.
Thank you so much, Tim. And lovely to see your father also online. Hopefully he'll get a chance to visit here before too long. We now move on to Anne Dolan of Mary Immaculate Teacher Training College in Limerick and a pioneer in introducing sustainability into primary education. Anne.
Good morning. Thank you, Peadar. I just want to check, can you hear me?
Yes, very much so.
Perfect.
See and hear you.
Wonderful. Well, good morning to you all. It was absolutely amazing and inspiring to hear the stories from the residents. And like Mary, I wish I could change what I was going to say. I think living sustainably is often equated with an impoverished rather than an enriched way of living. And because of the dominant capitalist narrative, living sustainably can really suffer from poor PR. Cloughjordan Ecovillage, however, clearly showcases the many benefits of transitioning to a zero carbon way of life. As Peadar said, I'm a lecturer in teacher education in Mary Immaculate College, and I am deeply involved in climate change education. It has been my privilege to bring groups of students and staff to the Ecovillage over the last few years. And unfortunately, we couldn't visit this year for very obvious reasons. Teaching about sustainability can be somewhat abstract in a third level setting. However, the visits to the village make sustainability more tangible for our students. Sustainability becomes something that students can see, hear, feel, and indeed taste. This, for me, is the ultimate benefit of the Ecovillage. Cloughjordan Ecovillage provides student teachers with an insight into a community determined to fight against climate change. A community that supports its members and the local economy, and a community that instills a sense of hope for the future. And never have we needed hope more than we do in the current age. As one of my students said, yes, we must teach children how to count and how to spell, but also we must give them the tools to make decisions that affect change. The world cannot be changed in day. I don't know why that happened, but throughout my career, I can make a change in my teaching from what I have learned during my visit to the Ecovillage. Such changes can help to activate current and future generations to think critically about decisions we make daily. So you can see from this comment that a student visit to the Ecovillage has a profound impact. In terms of suggestions for future moves for the village, I think that you need to document your story very clearly. I think you need to document it for all members of society and for every age group. I would strongly recommend a handbook documenting the lessons learned for communities who are struggling with issues of sustainability and the challenges of moving to renewable sources of energy. In terms of lessons for wider society, there are many, but I would single out the importance of a collective vision and the benefits of community living. I concur with Aaron, who spoke earlier about the benefits of connections, relationships, collaboration, and consensus. As one of my students stated, after visiting Cloughjordan, I now see the potential in terms of forming a school community spirit. I believe this is crucial, not only in terms of tackling the issue of climate change, but also with regard to the well-being and resilience of my community. Being able to hold a conversation with our neighbour, the local postman, the butcher, the lollipop lady. It's scary to think that we have become oblivious to these relationships in our community. And it's a simple thing that can make a big change. For me personally, I like Mary's call to academics to be pracademics. I would like the Ecovillage to extend its education focus and to continue to make links with schools, colleges, and universities. The Department of Education is currently drawing up a new strategy for education for sustainability, and I strongly believe that the Ecovillage should be part of that conversation. You should also think about your contribution to climate change and climate justice education, offering your model as part of the solution to climate change. In conclusion, if you could bottle your community spirit and sell it, you would all be millionaires. On that note, I would like to wish you the very best on your 20th anniversary, and here's to the next 20 years. Slán go fóill.
Thank you so much for that. And it has always been inspiring to have your students come here who seem to have been really impacted by what they experience here. So we move on now to Paul Kenny. Paul Kenny, known to us and who's been a huge support to us in so many ways over the last 20 years, formerly of the Tipperary Energy Agency, and now, of course, has moved on in life to be an advisor to Minister Eamonn Ryan. Paul, delighted to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Father. I'm delighted to be here, and what an interesting journey already over the first half of this session this morning. I told my 7-year-old son that I was going to a 20-year birthday party in the study, and he said, "Will you have cake there?" So hopefully sometime we can share some cake again. So what do I think about Cloughjordan and the relevance? I think what's really interesting is it's a set of ideas born in the physical world and in community. And, you know, coming to Cloughjordan as an energy engineer, as a nerd that's very much hardwired into hardware, it was really interesting for me, and I learned a lot from the various different people in Cloughjordan who I would call friends now, and some of them have spoken already. And some of them have left us, you know, Duncan and Devon I would have known very well. So I think, I found it very interesting. And just to reflect on Tim's comment, it's one of the things in running a social enterprise, trying to achieve particular outcomes, and sometimes those particular outcomes requiring maybe a quicker decision or a more, I don't know what the right word is, more, I suppose a more right-wing decision-making process maybe is the right word to put it. But you know, just I do think that's one of the lessons, and that I think you need to reflect on is how to elect a board and maybe put more faith in that board so that they can deliver for you. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's something you think about. In terms of relevance, Padder asked us to reflect on the relevance of Cloughjordan. It's just so relevant. The whole world has localized over the last 6 months or 8 months. We've really, really taken that on. People get to see their surroundings a lot more. They've stopped running and racing, and I think the lessons in Cloughjordan are amazing for that. I'm just going to reflect on a little anecdote. I brought 2 groups to the Ecovillage. One was my residents association from a normal housing estate in Maynooth to look at the edible landscaping, and Bruce took a tour. And at the end of it, we did nothing of use because everyone was afraid of apples being thrown by people at cars and all sorts of things. But the second time, I brought the Joint Oireachtas Committee that were working on climate change. And what was really, really interesting is in Tipperary County Council, we're working with the forward planning section, and Gerald will know all of this, and I'm sure we'll comment on it. But, you know, the idea of Tipperary being somewhere where people can live wonderful lives in a local, but also work globally. And you know, that idea has for me, come from, in part, people in Cloughjordan, and very much, you know, good transport links, good broadband, where people can do global jobs but live at a local level is really important. And you know, that Marcus O'Connor, one of the directors of service in the local authority, would be maybe one of the more conservative side of the world, you know, told all of our TDs this is what Tipperary's vision was and this is what Tipperary was aiming for. And then Iva had the same message in a completely different way from a completely different angle. And, you know, having such contrasting sources with the same message that this is, so relevant. And then COVID comes along 18 months later and really puts cement on that. And in government, there is this real push on this town and village centre rejuvenation, and the Ecovillage is so much part of the demonstration of what can be done. So I just, in terms of relevance, that's just an amazing thing to think about. In terms of lessons, there's a lot of lessons, and I just think you cannot make an omelette without breaking a few eggs. And there's a lot of things that haven't gone right, particularly some of the energy stuff, but then other things work very well. And in my 15 years in the energy agency, a lot of people would have said very positive things about the energy agency, demonstrating what can be done and all that sort of stuff. We didn't see all the failures. We didn't promote the failures, but we learned from the failures. And I think one of the big challenges we have in the public sector and how the public sector responds to the challenges of society, they respond in a way because they're afraid of failing. And they will analyze something to the nth degree before they can do something. And, I will say that is a source of huge frustration for me right now. It's very obvious what needs to be done, and we need to move better, faster, quicker. And it's always, analysis paralysis. So having demonstrated what happens in a village when you do rejuvenate it is so important, because it undermines the analysis paralysis. It undermines the paralysis part of it. So that's so important. I'm very optimistic about the future. I think I'll take your message back in terms of the train. I've already said that message, obviously being from Nina and travelling to Dublin several times a week. I think it's really important. There's a huge piece of work that we need to do in Ireland. We are 88% dependent on fossil fuels. Our transport system is a mess. We have so much work to do in energy, transport, heat. 93% of our heat is from fossil fuels. I know they're just stats, but the challenge is just so big, and we are up for the challenge, and everyone is. But we need people to demonstrate, and we need communities to come forward and say, "I'm up for this." And I think it's really good that Cloughjordan has done that, because it really works. Some other lessons I think one of the things that I've seen is particularly around the wastewater treatment, how let down Cloughjordan has been from both the professionals installing at the beginning. Professionals is a word. But also in just the lack of service delivery by some of our state agencies. And, it's really interesting in my current role that all of that comes through from society, how it's frustrated at the lack of delivery by the public sector and the lack of attention to detail and customer service. And that, for me, it's a lesson that's been learned in Cloughjordan, and I take that with me very, very personally and say, these are things that society needs the public sector to do. You can't just sit on it. So that's really, really interesting. So I'm done. So look, I think just that's my little reflection. I wish you all very much, very good wishes for the future, and I'm really optimistic for you.
Paul, thank you so much, and we're delighted to hear you be taking our messages to Dublin as you travel there so regularly and into the heart of government today. And now we're moving to the other side of the world. We welcome Heather Sullivan from State University of New York in Potsdam. She has brought her students here a few times, and we really appreciate Heather has got up very early in the morning to join us. We hope it won't be too long before she'll be back with us with her students. So a view from the US, Heather, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Well, we're just turning to your noon, I believe. Everyone can hear me? Okay.
Yes,
thanks.
Perfectly. We can hear you.
Great. Well, congratulations. I'm so honored to be invited to join you. I've been admiring your project mostly from afar for many years. My first tour was in 2011 while I was on a family vacation. My second visit was in 2018, and then the last 2019, and was hoping to have one in 21, but that's on hold. So why do I do this is the answer to your first question. What is the importance of the Ecovillage? I turn to two authors who have deeply influenced my understanding of our predicament and helped me to cope with the overwhelming despair that often accompanies it. Energy analyst Richard Heinberg and deep ecologist Joanna Macy. In Power Down, Heinberg outlined 4 patterns for addressing our dilemma. The first 2 characterize the dysfunctional approaches we've been witnessing for decades. Last one standing, the path of competition for remaining resources, basically war, or waiting for the magic elixir, as he put it, wishful thinking, denial, and that's like technology. You are modeling the other 2 possibilities. Power Down, the path of cooperation, conservation, and sharing, a controlled descent from fossil fuel use. And the fourth one, building lifeboats, the path of community solidarity and preservation. And this lifeboat analogy, the lifeboat analogy exemplifies what Joanna Macy describes as one dimension of what she and others call the Great Turning, redesigning the systems of our society in order to transition to a life-sustaining society. As Macy puts it, in countless localities, like green shoots pushing up through the rubble, new social and economic arrangements are sprouting. These actions hold the seeds of resilience and generativity for the future. You are doing the important work of literally reinventing civilization, serving as both a living laboratory for sustainability and a role model for the rest of the world, which really is the answer to your second question. What lessons do you offer wider society? I reordered them. To elaborate, I turn to reflections from my students. This first one taps the dimension of collective action. She wrote, "The biggest lesson I took away from my experience in Cloughjordan was that being part of an eco-village allows you to share common goals and aspirations with the ones around you. If the wider society adopted this, not only would the world around us be able to successfully achieve common goals, but it would provide a larger sense of community." The second student reflection addressed structural challenges. I still think often about the things we learn there. One of the lessons that I keep coming back to is how they demonstrated that many of our problems are systemic. A great example of this, and a theme today, was how they wanted to have compost toilets throughout the village, but needed a sewer-connected toilet per local health law. While that is a small example, it shows how the law was just not designed with sustainability in mind. The third emphasized personal ongoing effects. She said, "My experience at the Cloughjordan Ecovillage vastly impacted the way I live my life and understand environmental phenomenon. Some of the most valuable lessons I learned were in regards to resiliency and systems of living. We learned that it is better for the environment and people to rely on their own communities for their goods and services. Since returning home, I have stopped using Amazon completely, ceased shopping from major corporations on a regular basis, and started going to my local farmers market every Saturday. I feel more engaged with my community and am living much more mindfully. I'm extremely grateful to have had time in Cloughjordan and hope to go back someday." This was just a sample of the impressions our visit made, and it brings me to the final question. What suggestions you might have for us moving forward? Just quickly, I also bring students to the Ecovillage at Ithaca, about 200 miles away from me here in New York, now in their 3rd decade. And I see a tension They're between those who are tired of living in a fishbowl, who would simply like a good place to live and raise their family, and those trying to carry out a larger educational mission. Consider how you can remain accessible, expand your reach, and keep sharing the lessons you're learning while remaining a good place to live and work. I return to Joanna Macy's image of little green shoots among a sea of rubble. As you grow, you'll need to manage the delicate balance of welcoming in without being trampled. And we all need to keep working together to amplify the lessons you're learning and expand their impact. Only then will we achieve the dream of turning a sea of rubble to a sea of green. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Heather. That was very, very rich.
So, Peadar, we're going to welcome Ger Darcy next.
Sorry, I suddenly seem to be disconnected. I'm very sorry. Can people hear me?
Yeah, we have Ger now, so yeah, we hear you.
Over to Ger, from the global to the local. Ger, you're very welcome. Ger Darcy of Tipperary County Council.
Thank you, Peadar. From New York to our Crowley, I suppose. I suppose, first of all, congratulations to you all on your 20 years. It doesn't seem like that. Time goes much quickly as you get that little bit older, I suppose. If you don't mind, Peadar, I might just speak on what the Ecovillage, the impact it has had locally. I think I'm best qualified to speak on that. I won't have the same qualifications as an awful lot of your earlier speakers who were quite brilliant, really. But if you bear with me, I might have just a few points. I suppose...
Absolutely, Ger. Yes, over to you.
Where I might start is to go back 20 years or 25 years ago, maybe, and where we were in rural North Tipperary then, particularly in the rural areas that were away from the main urban centres, the Borsicanes and Cloughjordans and Lorras and Kilbarns and places like that. Lower Ormond, basically. It was an area, despite the fact that the Celtic Tiger was roaring all over most of the country, particularly on the East Coast. We're in an area of declining population, young people not hanging around, no great jobs, and a migrancy towards the bigger centres. The Ecovillage then came to Cloughjordan, and Cloughjordan as a town or a village back then, I suppose, really had lost its way in terms of being what it was built for originally as a market town to service the local rural community. Had bypassed it, really. So then the Ecovillage arrived, and I suppose what you brought mostly to the area, to my view anyway, was people. And people means a lot of things. It means, for example, more kids in schools, less risk of losing teachers. It brought footfall to the street, to the shops and the pubs and the businesses. It made Cloughjordan more vibrant and a more active place. We've seen new shops, we've seen new businesses, we've seen a new cafe, for example, we've seen Recreate, and we've seen a lot of new activity, and that was very welcome indeed. People from the Ecovillage then got involved in, for example, the Cloughjordan Development Committee, the McDonagh Centre, Scotta Bay Bog, and all that brings. Gerard very active out there, indeed, with Beara Breffney and all that on the way. Knocknacree, the Tidy Towns Committee, all the sports organisations, the local market, and go on. So people integrated, and this kind of new thinking and new people and new ideas. My first encounter with the Ecovillage really was back 2013, when the Ecovillage qualified to go to qualified in the pride of place competition for the live competition, an international competition for local communities. We were out there with the final event was in China. We were out there with Greg and Brenda and Davy and the two Gregs. And I knew, by the way, they took on that challenge we were dealing with some very capable individuals here. And, you know, they blew their competition out of water and won first place in their category. I think going forward, Cloughjordan, particularly with the COVID brought to our mind, I suppose, particularly where change is going to come from. And one of the great opportunities, in my mind, for local rural communities is the technology coming with broadband for people to work at home. I see it with my own eldest daughter, who used to commute daily to Limerick, now can work at home most days of the week, providing, you know, doing, while still working and local and active in our own local community. So these are the opportunities you have to seize upon. So I just mentioned to you last night, we had a quick meeting. What about the next years? What's the Ecovillage going to do in the future? So you've been here for 20 years in rural North Tipperary, a rural area, a local area, a great area to live, a great area to farm. It's a great area, and I'm a farmer. It's a great area for small businesses, a budding tourism business, we hope, enterprises going forward with Bear Brefty Way and others, potential for growth. One of the things I would like to see the Ecovillage doing as it integrates more and more and more with the people of the area, not just Cloughjordan itself, but the whole rural area, is maybe as to be kind of a source of greater understanding between the people who, like myself, who have lived in rural Ireland for all of my 60 years, who sometimes get extraordinarily and terribly frustrated with some of the people in Dublin and other areas, whether they're media or commentators or other, who have no understanding at all of rural Ireland and farming and that. And the potential you would have maybe, for example, I hear people on talking about the suckler herd and how it should be reduced. Most of them wouldn't know a suckler cow from a pup goat. So, like, they have no idea that what they're talking about is impacting or could impact severely on people's incomes. And in rural Ireland, you know, we're well aware that there are loads of changes that need to be made and will be made and have been made or in time in relation to environmental policies and biodiversity and stuff like that. And I don't think you'll find people wanting. But if you don't work with them, they'll go against you. And I think maybe that's a role that you guys should take on going forward. Just another point maybe in relation to the village itself and the Ecovillage. You know, there are issues outstanding there. And as you know, I'm a county councillor for the last nearly 30 years. So there are issues outstanding there in terms of, you know, wastewater and roads and stuff like that. And to be kind about it, some of your approaches have been a bit fragmented in dealing with the local authority over in times gone by. In fairness to Mick Kenny, I have to say, in the couple of meetings I have had with him and with council officials, he seems to have a better approach and a more professional approach, can I say that, in the way he meets with these council officials and that in trying to get his message across and what's needed. And we know the Ecovillage is not a conventional type estate as you would see anywhere else. Another thing maybe you should keep an eye on is Irish Water have introduced what they call the Small Town and Villages scheme for wastewater. Now, in Tipperary, there are 6 or 7 towns mentioned, and there'll be 2 of them are in North Tipperary. One is Cloughjordan, and the other is Silvermines. Now, I think it's important to keep your eye on the ball and to make sure that Cloughjordan gets the finance going forward to upgrade the system that will open up the area. The Ecovillage, we have mentioned maybe of possibility, maybe even social housing going in, but it won't go in without services. And we get in there and we work together as a group and we try and get Cloughjordan in there and get that get the facilities that are needed for the area to thrive and grow into the future.
Jared, thank you so much. We're probably going to
can I say one other thing?
Okay.
Just last year in October rather, we had a fantastic trip to Jordan. Very many members of the Ecovillage were there. It gave me an opportunity, my wife was with me, to meet a lot of people who would never really have gotten to know otherwise. And I'd just like to thank everybody who was helped in the organising of that trip. And it was kind of a difficult time for us because we had a bereavement in the family around the same time. So thank you all. The best of luck in the future.
Thank you very much, Ger. Thank you again for all your help, and we take your issues very much on board. So last but not least, Karen Ciesielski from the Irish Environmental Network. Over to you, Karen.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Perfect. Okay. I'm absolutely thrilled and honoured to be here today, and I only wish I could really be with you. I remember meeting Iva in about the year 2000, and she talked about the work that she was involved with in building this community in a place called Cloughjordan, taking this brave leap of faith and hope. I remained a city slicker in Dublin and have really watched from afar as you've developed and grown. Since then, I've been lucky enough to visit Cloughjordan, and I congratulate you on your 20th anniversary. And I can't wait until I can come back again and visit soon. Cloughjordan Ecovillage and projects based in Cloughjordan, including Cultivate, are active contributing members of the IEN and the environmental pillar, and really act as a central hub for our 30 plus members who come to Cloughjordan to gather, learn, and exchange ideas. The Ecovillage, to me, is a living example of what people can do when we come together with common goals. You're also excellent teachers in how to do that effectively and make sure that we bring people with us through building consensus and participative decision-making. And I think, as Iva mentioned in her reflections, resolving conflict, which does happen in every coalition or group, but how you deal with it is really important, and making sure the process is constructive and doesn't disempower people who are ultimately at the heart of the change we're looking for, and that we're all continuing to pull in the same direction. And that's something really that we benefit from as a movement and as a network from having the folks at Cultivate and the Ecovillage involved. This is really critical, as the work we're doing is long and we don't always win, as everybody knows. So it needs to be a process that doesn't forget our well-being, and that people are ultimately at the center of it. They're also at the cutting edge of sustainability practices and are constantly developing and innovating as a center of excellence, and one that's celebrated and recognized internationally. The environmental movement is certainly richer, has more expertise, and is more effective, particularly from a policy perspective, for example, with their breadth of knowledge in agriculture and the SDGs. But equally important is how we learn from the way you bring people together that has impacts that are greater as a result of collective action. So the next question I was asked to look at was what suggestions might we have for moving forward in Cloughjordan? Well, I think has been referenced this morning already as well, but COVID has presented us with enormous challenges to our health system, economy, and society. And really, there's so much rich learning to capture and share with the fundamentals of how we build back better. And I would challenge you to bring that knowledge to broad audiences and help us connect the dots of what you're doing at local level and how it connects with national policy and practice. And also to share your failings and challenges, which I know you do in a really open way, and that others can benefit from and from your learnings. In terms of the lessons that you offer wider society, as we see the direction of travel move, certainly with the European Green Deal and the Climate Pact, as well as overwhelming public support for urgent action on climate and biodiversity here and globally, there are so many people who want to do something, but they really aren't sure how their local actions fit with the wider picture, either nationally or globally. And what the Ecovillage does is provide a living, working example of community action to tackle the climate and biodiversity crises, developing systems for food production and getting goods to market cooperatively, creating local employment through a circular economy and social enterprises, and demonstrating how we can create dynamic, thriving communities, and that it really can be done. There isn't room for all of us in Cloughjordan, unfortunately, to move to, but I would love to see it, and it would be transformative as a society if we could bring some of what this village does so well to every community. And there's no reason why we can't if there's the political will and the right supports to do it. I know others mentioned this morning the importance of public support and public infrastructure to support communities and initiatives like Cloughjordan. I think one of the other things we can really learn from the Ecovillage is the amount of work that it takes and that it has taken you to get here to build an active, participative community. It doesn't happen overnight, and it takes serious intent and design from the outset, right through how you make progress and change happen. So just to finish, I just want to acknowledge all of the work that you're doing and wish you a very happy anniversary. And I look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen, and also many thanks to you and to IEN for all the support you've been to us over the years. Without our involvement in IEN, I think it's fair to say we wouldn't still be in existence. So IEN has meant a huge amount to us also. Now, before I hand back to Davy for a discussion which will bring in wider voices, just a very quick sum up of an immense richness of inputs that we have heard today, of people who value what we have to offer them, but also of people who come with an understanding that we have had many failures, that we have many limitations. And for me, the things that stand out from what people have said, I suppose, is the importance of gender inclusion and the importance of governance structures that can really move us forward. I mean, both of those are major challenges that we need to take on board. And yet people have ended with the possibilities, the rich possibilities that in many ways our time has come in the post-COVID situation. Our food model, our contribution to rural regeneration and the vital importance of that, how we can grow our educational offering, how we have so much to offer in terms of not just the successes of our community, but also the stresses and the tensions, the real life experience from which we can offer so many lessons. And issues like social housing, the need for greater diversity, the possibilities of drawing in young people into our community. Those are the things that struck me, and I just remind us of them as we move forward to draw other voices in. So I'm handing over now to Davy.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks, everyone. So we've got about 10 minutes to hear other reflections. Please, no questions, and please be as brief as we can. So we're really just sharing any observations or quick reflections. And I've asked people to put an H for hand in the chat so we can follow that. There's a few people want to come in, and we'll start with Elaine Doyle. So if you want to unmute yourself, Elaine, and come in. Elaine? Very, very quiet.
I'll just turn off that. Is that better?
That's better. Where are you?
Great, yeah. I just want to thank everybody. Everyone's reflections was really invaluable, especially the residents. So thank you so much. I suppose I'm 32, so the main reflections for my generation are what really stuck out for me was the money aspect. How do we make this, doable for my generation? And I think what COVID has taught me is that we need more affordable, eco-conscious communities that my generation can get into. So that was really what I took away from it. How do we create more space for people to maybe move away from the matrix and find eco-conscious communities? So as someone who is in the middle of trying to create an eco-conscious community, for me and a couple of friends, we are looking at getting donations from people so we can buy the land free of loans. So God, I can't believe how nervous I am, but yeah, thank you for that. That's just what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Elaine, thanks so much. Okay, so next up we have Joe or Julie, an H. If you want to come in with a brief reflection, just put an H in the chat. And Joe or Julie.
Hi, my name's Julie. I have the bakery here.
What happened?
Aspect that hasn't been mentioned is just aesthetic.
You're freezing.
And I feel that by creating...
Julie, your film is freezing. I don't know.
That personally is really important to me. So I wanted to communicate that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Fiona Nolan, you wanted to come in? Fiona? There you are. Do you want to unmute yourself?
I just wanted to comment on something that a few people referred to, Tim and Paul Kenny, and also, I think, Heather. So it's just, I suppose, our system of governance, our system of operation, and the need to get things done quickly. So while I think that is an issue for a lot of people, I think we also need to be cautious about how quickly you move ahead. And I come from a community development background, and also I'm trained in group analysis, but it's just there is a danger in A, chasing funding sources, and B, deciding something without bringing a community ahead. And in terms of any kind of community development, it takes time. We need to live out a live experience. And I do think there is a value in reflection and, in analysis, and that it does not necessarily lead to paralysis. And I would also support, as one of the two female members of the board, some more women coming onto the board.
Thanks, Fiona. And Sabine, you want to come in?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I have one big wish for Cloughjordan. Please continue making your experiences and learning accessible to all of us involved in community building and sustainability, regeneration, etc. I've already put a lot of what I learned in this summer's permaculture course into action for sustainable scaries. So thanks for that, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, Sabine. We've no more H's in the chat, meaning hand. I can't see everyone, but if anyone would like to come in, either indicate in the chat or just unmute yourself now, and we'll try and bring you in. Clifford Guest. All right, I'm trying to find you. Can you unmute yourself, Clifford?
Davey, just as a perspective of somebody who lives a mile away from the Ecovillage, from Cloughjordan, I think it's been of huge benefit to us here locally. There's things that would be the same, but there's things that have been very different. We have different types of walks in Knocknacree and Scohoboy. We have different types of bread to eat. We have different experiences in terms of the size of the two schools. We have our post office. We have the energy of the added people that can sit on committees and be involved in organizations and have circus clubs and have kickboxing. That whole critical mass has been a huge gift to Cloughjordan and to the people of Cloughjordan. And we have built up friendships and relationships, and that has also been a great gift. So from our family at least, and I think our neighbours and the people that we know and respect, it's been a huge positive contribution to Cloughjordan, and for that we're very thankful.
Thank you, Clifford. So we're coming to an end, but we could hear a few more reflections if anyone would like to make one. There's no one in the chat. Okay. So I'm going to hand back now then to Veronica, just for... Sorry?
Maybe I was clicking the wrong unmute button. Is there a moment?
There is. If you can be brief.
Yeah, okay. I just jotted down a couple of things. I was delighted to hear Eamonn Ryan speaking about homes in the community, because for some people, sometimes we're hearing project all the time, and I know it is a project, of course, but I do feel that we need to keep centre stage that the project and the houses built are actually about serving a community that is already here and that will be here in the future, and serving that community to realise their potential and all that suggests. Also, with regard to enterprise, I think we have a fantastic enterprise centre and so much enterprise that comes out of it. But I think we have many, many, many enterprises right across the community, and we mightn't use that term. And I'm just going to pick one because obviously there really are hundreds around here. And an enterprise I would see is somebody going into the square on a voluntary basis, unpaid, every morning to support the mental and physical health of anyone who chooses to join in. And I think that's been a wonderful thing, and a bow to the Tai Chi group and to Ina. And just finally, I'd also like to say a bow to, we talked about we've been supported financially by institutions, but in fact we've been supported by much more than institutions, by people who have done so quietly, and also by an ethical investor who remains quite invisible to me at least, and I think to most people. So I'd like to give a bow to those people, and I hope that we can pay them all back in time. And finally, I want to say, I know that's quick, I feel an immense gratitude and find myself in my third age living in such a stimulating, exhausting and warm community. And I thank you all for that. And I thank all the speakers today. You're fantastic.
Thank you, Jean, for that. And we've come to an end of our session, so I'll pass back to Veronica.
Okay, well, this has been a very rich conversation and a very rewarding experience. Just like to thank all our speakers, all our participants for joining us today and contributing so much. So with thanks to you all.